And we thank you all for joining us for today's press conference. We appreciate everyone's in attendance and those watching as well on a live stream. Our House members are just completed a very productive, and thank you all for participating, and important discussion with our statewide municipal police associations, where we heard compelling stories about the need for this bail reform. The distressing reality, and we just heard all about this, is that our bail system is broken. Violent criminals are able to leave jail and continue to victimize members of the public when they should be behind bars. Unfortunately, these stories are not new to me. As a member from the Harris County delegation, I've seen my fair share of tragedies caused by individuals released on bond in my city. Listen to this. Crimes committed by individuals out on bond have tripled in Harris County since 2015. 18,796 individuals were charged with new felonies or misdemeanors while out on bond in 2020 alone. This year to date, 70 defendants in Harris County have been accused of murder while out on multiple bonds, and as we just heard, in one case, a defendant was out on 7 simultaneous bonds. Hearing these numbers, I think we can all agree that these unnecessary deaths are the product of a broken bail system. The time to reform is now, and in fact, if we don't approve Representative Casal's constitutional amendment in this special session, which is part of this program, that part of bail reform will have to wait another 2 years at least. We are prepared to address this issue. We need more Democrats here to honor their commitment to come and work here in the Capitol. I'm going to turn the podium over to the people who can better describe the problem and its solution. And so joining us today are representatives from the associations we've just met with, and each of them would like to say a few words. Kevin, I think we're going to have you and TMPA go first. Would you mind introducing yourself as you do that so people know who you are? And then we'll bring up Representatives Murr and Smith. So, Kevin.
Thank you, sir. Hi, my name is Kevin Lawrence. I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Municipal Police Association. I'm also Chairman of Trustees for the Texas Fraternal Order of Police. We represent over 31,000 members across the state of Texas, and we hear from these officers every day. And we appreciate that the caucus and Chairman Murphy have invited some of those officers to come in and visit and talk about what's going on out there on the streets. Because what's going on is contributing mightily to the crisis of recruiting and retention we're having in law enforcement across the state of Texas. There is just no excuse for the fact that we keep re-releasing violent criminals onto the streets and making the jobs of these officers more difficult and more dangerous and making our streets less safe. So I'm going to let the actual officers that work the streets to do some more talking about this. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Let's go to you.
Okay.
I'll do it real quick.
Yep. My name is Frederick Fraser. I'm one of the Dallas officers here. I'm representing the Dallas Police Association and also representing the Texas FOP. What we've seen in the last couple of years is a heartbroken system of repeat offenders getting out with very minimal bail, if none, and committing the same crimes. We're going after the same individuals over and over and over. You've seen it in Dallas, you've seen it in Houston, you've seen it in Austin, and you've seen it in all the metropolitan cities, that the crime rate has gone and it's almost skyrocketed with the murders and homicides that are happening right now, which are the same thing. But we're seeing the same individuals that are out on bond committing these crimes. Our task force, where I'm assigned over at the U.S. Marshal, we are constantly going after the same person or the same individual groups that are committing these crimes while sitting on 2, 3, 4 bonds. It has to stop. Texas needs to know that the bail system is broken. These gentlemen behind me and ladies and gentlemen are behind me are going to fix this. I promise you that it's going to come, and it's going to come in a way that there's going to be some teeth and some honor to show the rest of the citizens of Texas that we've got to get this under control, or we're not going to have any police officers or places to live or metropolitan areas that are going to be safe in our state.
Good afternoon. My name is Justin Berry. I'm here on behalf of the Austin Police Association. It is our great pleasure, and we can't give enough thanks to the members behind us that are working on this bail reform issue. Here in Austin, we're currently seeing a huge increase in our violent crime cases taking place. All these violent crimes are being committed by the same repeat offenders over and over and over again. These are not your first-time person that stole a loaf of bread. These are not the people that went out there and maybe sped, committed a couple of traffic offenses, and are in jail. These are career criminals. These are people that have a long documented history of arrests and convictions for robberies, sexual assault, murder, and many other violent, horrendous acts that are taking place in our community. We need this bail reform to take place so that a way we can go forward to keep our community safe. It's one of the first charges that we have in our law enforcement abilities to try to keep our community safe, but we cannot do that without our judicial partners to do their job. So we're thankful here for the body here that are working on the bail reform to make sure that these repeat violent career criminals are held accountable in order to keep you and your family safe. So thank you all very much for being here today and helping out.
My name is Doug Griffith, and I'm with the Houston Police Officers Union. We represent about 5,000 members there in Houston. And I want to thank everyone here for coming out and actually taking this seriously. We've been beating this drum now for a couple of years, and it is truly sad and sickening to see what's happening to the citizens of our state, especially in these metropolitan areas. Just in Houston alone, we've had over 70 people murdered by people on multiple felony bonds. That's uncalled for. There's no reason we can't put these violent offenders away and hold them. It's a tragedy to see what's going on in our counties. It really is. We've had 6 of our last 7 officer-involved shootings involve people on bond. One of them had an ankle monitor on when he was shot by law enforcement. Our officers have to deal with that every day. I know they've said it repeatedly. We keep letting them out. We keep letting them out. We keep letting them out. The citizens believe it's our fault, when in reality, it's these judges. The judge's job is to protect the citizens of the county, and they're failing miserably. We have to do something, and I think that this bail reform is something that will help not only our citizens, but also help our law enforcement officers and all those that y'all represent. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Representative Andy Murr, and I have worked on the topic of bail reform for over half a decade now. And so I applaud Representative Reggie Smith and all of my colleagues around me for taking up a very serious topic. I'll tell you that most of our constituents are not familiar with the court system, and they have never been arrested, so they don't understand the principle of bail. In its essence, and under state law, the purpose of bail is to do 2 main things. One, to ensure that the arrestee shows up for court when they receive notice to do so. And the second portion is to protect the public, any victims, from the dangers associated with that person and their alleged offense. And in making a determination, we find that our magistrates across the state of Texas sometimes don't go to the steps that they may need to make an individualized review of the person before them and what or what not may happen if they are released on a high bond or low bond. The forms of bail include personal bond, which is where you vouch on paper any amount of money and you are released on your own recognizance, so to speak, to show up at a future court date, or a cash or surety bond in which an amount is written down and typically you have to pay a bail bondsman a percentage of that that's non-refundable in order for a person to make bail. This discussion and this topic centers around folks that are easily allowed to get out on a low bail or a personal bond scenario, especially when their criminal background or their criminal history tells you that that is not necessarily a good idea to protect the public. Under current Texas law, the Code of Criminal Procedure does not require a magistrate to have the criminal history in front of them. Now, while many of them may find it available and may incorporate that into the decision-making process, state policy does not put that front and center. And hopefully, under the legislation that's been proposed, we will see that turn a corner with additional training and additional information provided to magistrates so that they can make sound policy decisions that protect the public and keep us safe.
Thank you, Chairman Murr. Thank you to my colleagues for being here today. I'm Reggie Smith from House District 62, and I represent, I'm the person who's the bill author of HB 2. First, I would like to recognize all the stakeholders who have put so much time and effort on House Bill 2. But a special thanks to Chairman Murr, Senator Huffman, and Representative Casal. They have worked tirelessly for years on bail reform, and we would not be here today without them. In crafting this bill, we wanted to make certain that we strike a strong balance between the safety of the general public and the rights of the accused. I want to highlight 3 main components of the bill. First, House Bill 2 requires the development and implementation of a public safety report system by the Office of Court Administration. This system sets informational requirements for setting bail, including identifying information of the defendant, name, case, and charges, criminal history of the defendant, eligibility of defendant for personal bond, and any conditions of bond requires in a condensed and easily readable format. The bill also requires this report to be made available to the appropriate magistrate when making bail decisions, which allows the magistrate to make an informed and speedy decision. Second, House Bill 2 prohibits defendants from being released on personal bond when they are accused of a violent offense, including capital murder, aggravated kidnapping, aggravated sexual assault, and aggravated robbery. The bill also prohibits the release on personal bond of a defendant who commits a violent offense while out on bail or on probation. Finally, House Bill 2 sets training requirements for judges, sheriffs, and other law enforcement entities responsible for setting and taking bail. I believe that House Bill 2 will simplify bail decisions while simultaneously reducing undue risk to the public at large. It is imperative that we deliver on this issue to keep our communities safe and ensure that individuals do not stay behind bars for nonviolent crimes or because of their income status. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reggie. Appreciate your hard work on the bill. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I'll just be quick and wrap this up here, but before we move to the questions portion, I want to thank our Police Association people for spending their time with us today. We learned a lot, and each of them got to speak except for Officer Sanchez, whose personal testimony was quite powerful. I think my colleagues would agree. When you hear a good officer like that say they don't see things the way they used to see them in an optimistic and positive way and are concerned about public safety, and you hear about the explosion in crime that's occurring, the explosion in crime, particularly violent crime, from the same individuals, not more criminals, just the criminals we aren't keeping in jail. It tells you we're here for the right reasons. We're here to pass legislation for bail reform. It's necessary. It's necessary for Texas. It's necessary for our families, for our communities, for our future. We need our colleagues to return home, to honor their commitment, to serve the people, to pass this important legislation. If we read one more story about an officer being killed, about a person being victimized by somebody out on bail, it's on the Democrats who aren't showing up to pass these bills. We can't dance around this any longer. This is a crisis. We need to get work done. So with that, we encourage our colleagues to return to Texas and protect their communities. And we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. I think we only have a couple folks here, so you can monopolize it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us here today. I guess my main question would be that the only real opposition I've been hearing from Democrats and from criminal justice reformists is the monetary bond. They support increased communication in the courts, and they do agree that violent criminals should be staying behind bars, but they're worried about the monetary bond, the umbrella, that it could spread beyond just violent criminals and could impact somebody who gets put in jail just for a small possession charge. So I guess what's your response to that concern right there?
I'm going to ask Reggie to talk about that, because we talked about that. We had a longer briefing today, but we're really talking here about the assessment should remedy that, but I'll let Reggie talk about that. Are you good with that?
Yeah. No, thank you for the question. You know, as I detailed out a moment ago, first of all, there's three different types of bonds, right? You already have cash bond, you have surety bond, and you have personal bond, okay? So judges can already make monetary bonds, either cash or surety, right? What this does, it strikes a balance with a public safety report where judges have more information, more training, so that they can make a good determination on what type of bond and what kind of conditions is most appropriate for each defendant. What we're trying to do is an individualized assessment of each defendant rather than just broad brush.
That's a good question. Yeah, thank you.
And then my other question, I'm not sure if you've seen, but some of the Democrats that are in D.C. are coming out with their own agenda item. They're naming it the People's Session. They're going to be holding a press conference on it tomorrow, where they're going to introduce bills ranging from Medicaid expansion to fixing the grid. I guess what's your response to the fact that they're announcing their own agenda while still being in D.C.?
It sounds like we're continuing a political theater that's going to produce nothing for the people of Texas. I encourage them to come here where the people's work occurs, to the Texas Capitol. We welcome all their ideas, but that's just silly.
And last question for you, obviously it's top of mind for a lot of Texans right now with the Delta variant picking up. I just wonder if there's any conversations going on among the legislators about, possible steps going forward. The governor obviously remains the kind of head of handling executive orders and everything, but just wondering if there's any conversations going on right now.
There are conversations every day about what we're going to do about this latest surge. We had Dr. Hellerstadt brief all of us yesterday. I think just about everybody was there to learn what we can do for our communities. We're getting great information to share with people to better protect them. Just one of the other benefits of being in Austin to do your legislative duty.
And last question, I guess.
Sure.
Tomorrow, a bunch of Democrats are planning, they're calling it a Selma-style walk from Georgetown to the Capitol. It's going to be a walk over multiple days. Again, fighting against this voting bill. Just kind of want your perspective on, the real effect that this will have. For example, Beto O'Rourke will be kind of leading the march. Just wanted to get your take on the walk.
Well, I encourage them to come to Austin. We have a great trail to walk along the river. Then they can come to the Capitol and do their work. That's really the point of what we're saying is theatrics and games. We want the work to be done here. Important matters like the 13th check for our retired teachers, or bail reform, CPS reform, those are all in play right here and now. They need to get accomplished. I encourage them to get their exercise, but they can do that right here in Austin. Thank you.